Welcome to NEDA's Excerpts from the Experts, 7-minute learning sessions with researchers and practitioners in the field of eating disorders, and individuals who share their stories and perspectives. I'm your host, Sarah Bowie-Keaton. This week, our guest is Dr. Riley Nickols. He is a counselor and sports psychologist who specializes in working with athletes in his private practice called Mind Body Endurance. He is a senior advisor to EDCare's EDGE program in Denver, Colorado, for athletes receiving intensive eating disorder treatment, and frequently speaks and consults to enhance patient care and to improve the identification and detection of eating disorders in the sports community. He was previously the director of the Victory program at McCallum Place in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, Riley will be speaking about relative energy deficiency in sport, also known as REDS. Riley, welcome to our program. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah.
So what is REDS and how is it different from an eating disorder?
That's a great question. So REDS is essentially a framework that is expanded on the female athlete triad. And so essentially, REDS can have damaging effects on all systems in the body, including psychological functioning. And the REDS framework includes more considerations due to low energy availability, which essentially is that the body does not have enough energy to support all of its functions. So it leads to the state of REDS can lead to issues with reproductive health, cardiovascular functioning, in addition to developmental gastro-GI issues as well, and metabolic functioning. Additionally, in a state of REDS or low energy availability, there can be psychological impairments as well, including increased anxiety and or depression as well. So this mismatch of energy that an athlete needs to maintain vital functioning and just in their daily life, including the energy expended in training. And so essentially, there's not enough energy to support those functions to maintain a state of health and wellness as well. And over a prolonged period of time, that can have implications on a multitude of systems of the body and eventually performance, although the human brain and body are quite resilient, and even in a state of being unwell can perform at a pretty high level for a period of time. So athletic performance does not always deteriorate initially in a state when there is low energy availability. It is likely to at some point as well.
So how is this treated?
So REDS is oftentimes best treated through a multidisciplinary treatment team. And similar to eating disorders, which a multidisciplinary team is needed as well, this holds true for REDS as well. So that oftentimes needs to consist of a physician to assess and monitor the health of an athlete and all the systems of the body that can and eventually will be impacted as a result of being in a prolonged state of low energy availability. So this includes foundationally just medical stability. If you think about an athlete who is medically unstable, for any individual, that's problematic. It's of high risk. And then an athlete who might be training and stressing the body additionally in a state of perhaps being medically unstable is really a frightening proposition and quite risky as well. So a physician needs to monitor the body's physical health. That consists of ordering labs, cardiovascular health, amongst others. In addition, a sports dietitian is clearly needed to really assess an athlete's energy needs and to develop kind of education and a plan to restore energy. And so a sports dietitian is really vital in this to really support kind of the underfueling as well as perhaps guide kind of the reintroduction or modification of training that an athlete needs to have as well. And in addition to the physician, a sports dietitian, a mental health provider is needed as well. So there's oftentimes kind of some underlying reasons and factors that are at play for perhaps the development and sustainment of a state of low energy availability or REDS. And so support is needed to address oftentimes co-occurring mood changes that are often at play as well. So, and that can, and anxiety, depression, perhaps obsessive compulsive disorder or others can predate a state of low energy availability or REDS. And then in the context of REDS, these mood disturbances too can intensify and oftentimes do as well. So a mental health provider provides support in those areas as well. A big component of treatment, of course, is increased nutrition to restore energy. And oftentimes there needs to be, some athletes are able to kind of restore energy by targeting and increasing nutrition, while others need a combination of increased nutrition and decreased output or training for a period of time to facilitate that process and energy restoration in a timely manner. So additionally, there needs to be sometimes some rest, increased rest, whether that's rest days, decreased training volume or intensity for athletes as well. And then really thoughtful return to sport considerations for reintegrating back into sport. And oftentimes a multidisciplinary team needs to collaborate regularly to best support an athlete and guide their treatment in this process. So
that brings me to my next question. Actually, I was going to ask, what are some of the preventative measures and takeaways that you can offer to athletes and people in sports?
Yeah, so I think the adage you don't know what you don't know, I think is very true in this regards too. And I always operate that sport providers and parents and teammates are always really well-intentioned and have the best intentions. But I think sometimes some of these well-intentions can be slightly misguided. And I think sometimes just recognizing perhaps that when we veer outside of our lane of expertise, such as maybe offering weight or body composition guidelines to athletes or nutritional modifications or exercise and training modifications, and that is not our wheelhouse of expertise, that is really just a risky proposition and unintentionally puts athletes' health and well-being in danger. So I think a big part of this is deferring and referring to qualified individuals who this is kind of their wheelhouse and domain of expertise, I think is most important. I also think too, just in terms of the environment that's created in the context of a team or sport, is really important, and such that what kind of environment are we creating where proper nutrition and fueling is prioritized, right? And there's not diet talk or fat talk, and that's not normalized on the context of a team, which unfortunately it can be. And I think that can be preventative too, especially for some of these athletes that are maybe predisposed or vulnerable to struggle in this way as well. I also think just really thoughtful considerations about how weight and body composition are talked about and delivered to athletes is very important. And I think these needs to be based in science. Again, need to have qualified providers who are assessing, monitoring, and communicating this information to athletes. And it needs to be a conversation as well. I think sometimes these metrics are given to athletes and there's really not a lot of context around what these numbers or objective measures mean and what they need to do with them. And I think sometimes too, that can pose notable risk factors for athletes as well.
And so maybe having the doctor walk through the chart and, to explain everything, give it some context would be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the last thing that maybe comes to mind is just as providers in terms of multidisciplinary treatment team, but also coaches as well, just in sport personnel, kind of viewing sometimes like REDS or low energy availability, almost in the context of like an injury. And so as such, sometimes sport participation might need to be modified for a period of time, and just that there's consistency in terms of the messaging that athletes are hearing. And there's an ability to really take this state of low energy availability and REDS very seriously, because very quickly, although there is distinct differences between REDS and an eating disorder, it absolutely, there can be really disadvantageous psychological, medical, health consequences in a state of RED. So I think taking that seriously can be quite protective to an athlete's health, well-being, and functioning.
Well, great information. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
NEDA's mission is to support individuals and families affected by eating disorders and serve as a catalyst for prevention, cures, and access to quality care. NEDA offers programs and services designed to help you find the help and support you need. Whether you have been personally affected by an eating disorder or care about someone who has, recovery is possible, and we're here to support you.